Hey guys, my name is Gio, and I have a 3229 currently in Mega Man X2, which at the time is tied for third place on the leaderboards. I decided that I'd like to make a Mega Man X2 any% guide to help newer runners learn the game. This guide is going to go over beginner strats to advanced strats to help you improve as a runner throughout Mega Man X2. In my opinion, Mega Man X2 is the hardest one to learn out of the SNES trilogy, as it is very punishing and the movement is very intense. However, hopefully with this guide, you're able to get into Mega Man X2 with a smooth experience and have a really fun time playing what I consider to be one of the best speedruns. Starting off running the game, you need a Super Famicom or Super Nintendo with the Rockman X2 cart. We use the Rockman X2 cart because it saves around 15 seconds over the US cart in any%. Or you can use the FX Pack Pro with X2 on it. However, it is worth noting that it is on a separate board from the console leaderboards, so just keep that in mind. You can also use an emulator like SNES 9X or BSNES to run this game. Like the FX Pack Pro, if you're playing on an emulator, you're going to be playing on a different leaderboard. This is because the CX4 chip is not entirely accurate on these emulators. The lag is not entirely the same, especially on SNES 9X, so the boards are separate, and there's going to be some sections that are less laggy on SNES 9X noticeably. You also need a timer, preferably live split, or if you're playing on Mac like I used to, you can use live split 1. It is not necessary, but it is extremely helpful to download the Mega Man X2 practice hack. I will link that in the description. You are able to create save states and practice any stage that you want. There are a few other resources in order to learn this run besides this guide. For example, the World Record Speedrun in 3222 by Tokyo90, which I will be linking in the description. There's also my full gold segment playlist that I have on my YouTube, which I'll highlight all of my gold segments so that people have reference of what to go on or what a good gold is, since my sum of best is the second fastest in the community at this point. There's also an alternate tutorial series by Just Incredible that I will also be linking in the description. If you are just starting out on Mega Man X2 and you don't know already, you can rebind your controls in the option mode. There are quite a few runners that dash with A. However, a lot of people prefer to dash with L or R because it's easier to climb and hold charge while shoulder dashing. You can also dash by pressing the same direction twice quickly. This is called command dashing. Mega Man X2 any% is unique in the sense that we get to grab all of the items. All 8 hearts, all 4 sub-tanks, and all 4 armor pieces. This is because we want to grab the Shoryuken in Counter Hunter 3 stage. The Shoryuken eliminates a lot of RNG and saves a lot of time in the final 2 stages of the run. Mega Man X2 is the only game in the SNES trilogy that we can grab all of the items and still not have to backtrack for anything. Theoretically, the fastest way to complete Mega Man X2 is just grabbing the Buster upgrade and grabbing no other items. However, this is a strat that only the TAS does at the moment, because of how much RNG is in the Shori Rush without the Shoryuken, and how laggy the final fight can be. So in RTA or real-time attack, we're just going to grab all the items and get the Shoryuken. We're not, however, going to grab the 0 parts. We go to Wire Sponge first in order to get the Strike Chain, and also have Gator's weakness. We then go to Gator in order to get the Charge Buster, which is an extremely useful upgrade. We then go to Stag third. Going Stag third allows for us to get the Charge Burner a lot earlier in the run. Runners used to go Ostrich third, but the Buster duel with Stag is a lot faster than going Ostrich third and having extra neon jumps to do, and a Buster Ostrich fight. We then go to Magna Centipede and fight him with the Buster. Afterward, we go to Crystal Snail, and then Overdrive Ostrich. The 7th and 8th Mavericks are Crab and Moth. You can save a stage select by going Crab 7th compared to Moth 7th. However, if you would like an easy way to get a lot of full sub-tanks and don't mind taking the time loss starting out, you can go to Moth 7th and then go to the secret area in Bubble Crab stage with Charged Silk Shot to fill all of your sub-tanks as fast as possible. Otherwise, you'll just go to Crab 7th and Moth 8th. If you decide to do the Crab 8th route, then the area that you'll fill your sub-tanks is right under where the fish opens the floor. You'll go in there and use the Charged Silk Shot. instead of the silk shot that you'll normally see whenever you use the weapon, you'll see a bunch of big health drops, and you'll be able to very quickly fill up your sub-tank. Unlike in X1, in X2, we start with the ability to dash from the beginning without having to get any extra upgrades. This is going to be your most basic form of horizontal movement throughout the game, and also the fastest way of traversing horizontal sections before we get any extra upgrades like the charge burner or the strike chain, which we'll talk about later. So optimizing your dashes and keeping yourself in dash speed rather than walking speed is going to be important for keeping your movement fast throughout Mega Man X2. As you want to be in dash speed as long as possible, you'll want to avoid as many walking frames throughout the game as possible. So whenever you're actually dashing and chaining your dashes, you'll want to make sure there's as few walking frames in between your dashes as possible. You'll also want to make sure you extend your dashes as long as possible, because as you can see here, there's actually a startup for X's dashes. So every time you start up a dash, you're going to lose a bit of time to movement. So you're going to want to extend your dashes as long as possible, because you want to be in dash speed as long as possible, but you want to minimize the amount of dashes you're doing because the amount of start time there is. One thing to note, whenever you're doing your dashes, this is one of the most important parts about moving. Whenever you land on the ground, you want to minimize as many walking frames as you have whenever you land. So you'll want to pretty much press dash as soon as you can. So here I have I'm at 60 FPS, two walking frames before I start my dash again. You can do a dash as soon as you land. You want to find that sweet spot in between dashing as early as you can when you hit the ground and not missing your dash, because one of the most common things is hitting dash early and then just walking there. And it's a really frustrating mistake, and it's something to get used to whenever you're optimizing your movement. But you'll want to make sure you just have as few walking frames as possible when you land. The next part of movement I'm going to talk about is wall climbing. Mega Man X2 has a lot of vertical sections, and so optimizing your vertical movement via wall climbing is actually really important. Whenever you're wall climbing, you'll want to minimize the amount of wall kicks you're actually doing, because wall kicks also have a startup animation, and this is slow. You want to find that sweet spot between holding your jump and getting the maximum amount of height from each wall kick, while still re-grabbing the wall as fast as possible. Because you want to avoid wall kicking as much as possible during your vertical movement, if you see ledges like this, you'll want to take them, because you just get an extra jump and gain more height without having to worry about that slow wall kick animation. Some sections, you'll actually be able to get up here in a double kick. A double kick is going to be faster than doing two kicks like that. One thing to know about Mega Man X wall climbing is that as long as you're within 7 pixels of the wall, you are still actually able to wall kick the wall. The farthest away from the wall being 7 pixels, this is a 7 pixel kick. This is going to be a useful type of kick you'll see coming later. And we also have the closest we can be to the wall being a 0 pixel kick, which is pretty much you're just buried into the wall as much as possible. Whenever you're grabbing a ledge the opposite of you, for example, in this case, the wire sponge sub-tank, you actually do not have to press the direction of the ledge. If you're within 7 pixels of the wall, you're still able to wall kick. One unique thing about Mega Man X2 and Mega Man X3 compared to X1 is that you actually do not have to repress dash every time you're doing a dash kick off the wall. As you see here, I dash with R, so I'm going to hold the R button on my input viewer, and if you see, I'm not repressing it, and I can still just get dash kicks whenever, as long as I'm holding it. Mega Man X2 has the least amount of gaps out of the SNES trilogy, but I'm still going to cover them for the sake of movement. There are 3 ways to do a gap jump. There's the turnaround method, where you 0 pixel kick off the wall and then fit inside the gap. This is my personal favorite. There is the 7 pixel kick method, where if you 7 pixel kick off the wall, it sets you up perfectly to hit the gap. I personally am not good at this, but I know a lot of people have better time 7-pixel gapping than I do. And then there's the double kick. This is the slowest method of gap jumping, but double kicking will also set you up to hit a lot of gap jumps. One piece of movement tech that returns from Mega Man X1 is the slope jump. Whenever you're moving down a slope and in the direction of the slope, you have boosted speed and boosted height. This is useful because you can avoid wall kicks in certain areas and get to areas you wouldn't be able to before. In subsections of Mega Man X2, we need to take damage on purpose in order to get past certain enemies. However, wherever the enemy is, if we hold the direction of that wall, we can actually shorten our iframes and be able to move again faster. One of the most important weapons that you get in Mega Man X2 for movement is the Strike Chain, which you get from the first boss Wire Sponge. You're actually able to pull yourself forward with this weapon, and you're going to be using it a ton throughout the run. Most of the time with Strike Chain, you just need to press shoot towards the wall that you're trying to grab onto to pull yourself forward. However, if you're trying to chain yourself forward from a ledge, you sometimes need to press shoot before you press right, like so. The charge chain is the fastest method of movement in Mega Man X2, however you do need a wall in order to use it, so we're going to be using the charge burner a lot more throughout the run. Whenever you're using charge chain, you need to make sure you give yourself time to let it extend before you pull yourself towards the ledge you're trying to go to. One thing to note about the charge chain is that if you press the direction opposite of where you're chaining to, your charge chain will be cancelled, but you will still maintain the charge chain speed. The charge burner acts as a faster dash that you can use mid-air or on the ground. So we're going to see it used a lot throughout this run. One thing to note about the charge burner is that whenever you use it on the ground, the animation actually lasts longer than you do if you use it in the air. Most of the time this is trivial because you'll be in burner speed still whenever you use it in the air. Similar to charge chain, if you end up pressing the opposite direction that you're burnering, you get to maintain your burner speed mid-air as long as you don't hit the ground. This is the Mega Man X2 mech. It can dash and jump just like Mega Man X, however it can also do a punch. It also has two special moves as well. It can hover, and it can lunge. Now, lunging is one of the most useful features, as whenever you lunge, you gain a ton of speed. However, if you actually lunge across a gap, and then start tapping your float feature, you're actually able to conserve that speed across large periods of time. In most cases in Mega Man X2, we're going to want to choose the charge version of the weapon that we're using. However, a lot of bosses are going to just be out of iframes for a lot of the time while we're charging, since it takes a long time to actually charge up, which is why we use a strat called CFOing. This strategy uses the travel time of an uncharged weapon to allow for the primary weapon to charge. This allows us to maximize the damage per second of our bosses. In the example I'm showing, we're CFOing with the Buster, but we're going to see a lot of unique ways to CFO throughout the entirety of Mega Man X2. One thing to note about using the X-Buster is that whenever you are at dash speed, the first lemon that's on screen will do 2 damage instead of 1. This allows us to keep bosses in iframes for a lot longer than we would normally be able to, because of how long it takes to actually charge up our shots. Shoryukens are one of the most challenging parts of the speedrun, as at the very end of the game, you have to do some really demanding inputs under a lot of pressure. The 2 requirements for performing a Shoryuken is that you have full HP and you are on the ground. There are a few main ways of doing Shoryukens. One is the half circle, where you go from left to right or right to left and then shoot. Another method is pressing the direction you want to Shoryu and then doing a quarter circle and shooting, like so. Please note that you want to be sure to get your diagonal input and your down input as well as your right inputs, as they're really important in order to getting your Shoryu. You can actually press the direction you want to Shoryu afterward. For example, if I want to Shoryu left and I'm uncomfortable with doing the left and then quarter circle left, I could do the inputs for a right Shoryu and then press left. And I'll get a Shoryu to the left. In Mega Man X2, we can buffer shots at the beginning of the fight. In order to do this, we need to press and hold shoot during the time in between the boss's health bar being full and the fight actually starting, during that little pause time where the game is frozen. If you do this correctly, a lemon will come out at the very first frame of the fight. You're also able to buffer Shoryu inputs at the beginning of the fight, but the timing is a little different, so we're going to talk about those later. The Buster upgrade is unique in Mega Man X2 in that the second shot of the Buster upgrade actually ignores iframes. So whenever a boss is in iframes, you can actually still hit them with the second shot and it'll still do damage. This allows for some pretty overpowered combos. It's also worth noting that whenever you're sliding down the wall, you're actually able to get both shots out faster. There's a glitch in this game with the Buster upgrade that if you release your first shot whenever going through a door, you're actually able to conserve your second shot and be able to weapon swap without having to worry about losing it. Most boss fights that start with the pink shot, you can utilize this to swap to chain in the corridors and save a bit of time with movement. Another use of the Charge Buster upgrade is that with the dash boots, you're actually able to do double jumps or triple jumps. These are called neon jumps, and there are two types of neon jumps. There is a release neon jump, which is performed with the first shot of the pink charge, and then there is a press neon, which is performed with the second charge. To perform a release neon jump, you need to press jump on the next frame after you release your shot. This is done by sliding your finger from Y to B during an air dash, like so. A press neon is much easier, and can be performed by pressing jump and shoot on the same frame during the air dash animation, like so. If you're an A-dasher and are struggling with neon jumps, you can use the concept of command dashing to also air dash, like so. To perform a double neon, you'll just do a release neon into a press neon. One piece of lesser-known tech in Mega Man X2 with the Buster upgrade is that you can do turnaround kicks on left walls using the Neon upgrade. The beauty of the Neon kick is that you're actually able to start moving at dash speed in the direction you want to without having to crest like you do with a normal dash kick. So whenever I'm wall kicking here, I have to go all the way to the right before cresting back over the left, whereas when I do a Neon wall kick, I'm already going to the left, like this. In order to do this, you need to be within the 7-pixel window of the wall, and not be using any D-pad inputs. You need to press shoot a few frames before you press your dash kick. So here we are in the Morph Moth fight, and the reason I brought us here is because it's one of the most egregious cases of lag in Mega Man X2. Some mistakes in Mega Man X2 can result in one of the worst frame rates we've ever seen in any game ever. This is awful. We can't entirely get rid of the lag, however we can minimize it by taking damage in certain sections, put us in iframes which can make the section less laggy, or we can kill certain enemies that are causing lag. Other than that, we kind of just have to deal with lag. I hope this tutorial helps you better understand Mega Man X2 starting off. The following chapters of this tutorial are going to be one stage at a time, so Chapter 2 will be Intro Stage, Chapter 3 will be Sponge, Chapter 4 will be Gator, and so on. One last thing before you move on to Chapter 2 is that this is a very difficult speed game, no matter how you put it. From beginner level to intermediate level to advanced level, this game is always going to be difficult. So do not get discouraged, and do not be afraid to ask for help, and utilize your resources you have. Good luck in your journey speedrunning Mega Man X2. I will see you in the next chapter.